funny how the mind wanders. Little table needs a stretcher to stop the legs from falling apart. Nobody likes anything where the legs just fall apart. So we've got to make some mortise and tenon joints, and it's been a while since I've done stuff like that, and I looked around for a drill to make little holes with, and my hand fell on this drill, which was hanging on the wall, and it just went through my head. I didn't know how old this drill was, but the internet being a wonderful thing, it allowed me to look it up. This is a Stanley Model 5803 drill. They were manufactured between 1965 and 1981, which means that it's at least 42 years old. But it works, and that's the important thing for me this morning. But then I thought I need a chisel to dress those mortises out with. Ah dear, haven't used this one for a while. When these were new, they had a wonderful transfer on them, and I can't remember what brand this is, but this is one of my father's chisels from, well, when he started doing this sort of caper. So that's, well, yeah, 70 years old. Needs sharpening. So that's going to be my next job, put an edge on that chisel. Of course, it would be better if I had one that was the right size. This is one that came in a set. It's a Marples chisel with a plastic handle. Oh dear, that needs cleaning and sharpening before it will do what I want it to do. I don't know about you, but I don't find it nearly as satisfying using a tool with a plastic handle as I do using one with a wooden handle. Maybe that's just a prejudice of mine. And if we're going to put a decent edge on a tool, best I use a decent stone. I've already duffed this up with a cheap stone just to get the angle nearly right, but this stone, this is what I think of as my dad's spare stone. He always had two, and this is the one that he didn't use. And he always described it, rightly or wrongly, as an Arkansas stone. I don't know if that's right or not, that's just what my dad called it. It's a very fine grained stone for putting a very fine edge on tools. And yeah, I'm going to need a fine edge on this job. And so it goes on. This is another chisel that I've had rattling around. It's one that came from my father's estate, as it were. And I've actually given it a quick clean. It needs a bit more. It needs sharpening. And it's the right size for the next job that I want to do. But I think before we do it, we ought perhaps just talk a little bit about Aaron Hildick of Sheffield. Now, I suspect that this very blunt, look at that, you can see how blunt it is, chisel originated as being supplied to schools within the Essex County Council district. I suspect that's where it came from, and it's a lot shorter now than it was when it first arrived, and it probably had got to the point where it was legitimately disposed of. But Aaron Hildick, what do we know about him? Not a great deal, except it seems that the Hildick family originally arrived in England as refugees. There's a thing. Often we think of refugee problems as being a new thing, but no, the Hildicks arrived in England as refugees from the Low Countries. They were probably Huguenots, Protestants thrown out by the various difficulties that bits of Europe was going through at the time. And a couple of them settled in Sheffield, where they established a steel tool business. They ceased trading in 1950. So this poor old thing that I'm going to give a bit of love and attention to shortly was made before 1950. And those of us that were made after 1950 are entitled to think, wow, that's old. Yeah, and someone's been hitting it. And this isn't a hitting hammer, this is a hitting chisel. This is a chisel to be used with your hands. You can use a wooden mallet on it, but yeah, it's been used and abused. We'll make it a bit more useful. Yes, I do give them clean water, but for reasons best known to themselves, manky old water in a watering can is just so much nicer. Well, time is a cruel master, isn't it? The Angelus bell has rung, which is supposedly the time of evening that you stop work. And we look on the day and we think, what have I actually achieved today? Well, I've done some gardening, I have. I've lifted quite a lot of weeds. I've done a wash load, so I have got a clean sock for the morning. I cooked lunch, I cooked dinner. I've sharpened and cleaned 3 chisels. I have marked out and I've cut a couple of mortises. It's been a long while since I've done this sort of work, but it's very enjoyable. Not very quick, but very enjoyable. So there we are. Yes, we've achieved a few things today. And we can finish the day how we started it, with the Prière du Soir, evening prayer. And we're told before prayer, never neglect to recueillir, collect, to gather your soul